Meacham, the author of American Lion, Andrew Jackson in the White House. I have a lot to talk about you as well, Mr. Meacham. I want to get your reaction first. John Meacham, what do you think of these poll numbers?
Well, I think that the president lives and dies by ratings, and this is not a good first report card. The 100 days construct is from FDR. 1933 was a time of grave existential crisis for democratic capitalism, so it's been a kind of artificial test ever since. However, both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama had at least a 15, and I think in Obama's case, maybe a 20 or plus point advantage over where Trump is on the approval rating. Mm-hmm. And in their midterms, in 1994, the Republicans won, I think, 54 seats in the House, 6 in the Senate. And in 2010, I think it was 63 seats in the House and about 6 or 8 in the Senate. So, and numbers after the 100 days tend not to go up. So this is, to me, it's a significant bellwether that if you were a Democrat thinking about making a challenge in 2018, after tonight, I would be making some fundraising calls.
Interesting. Mark, I want to ask you, because your episode of the Circus on Sunday night was about the resistance, right? Do the poll numbers that John just cited match with what you have been hearing out there?
They do. It shows there's a lot of energy on the left, although the left, just like the Republican Party was for so many years, is divided, because you kind of have purists on one side and kind of the old guard on the other. We saw Dianne Feinstein town hall, and I remember when we all thought she was a liberal from San Francisco, and now she's being booed by the progressive left, which is kind of an interesting development. I'm really struck by the poll, because I've never seen a poll that had where you had such a majority of people who think their country's on the right track and think the economy's doing well, and that's so disconnected from the favorability of the president. Generally, those things are tied together. And I'll tell you what that means to me. It means that it doesn't really matter much what Trump does. There's going to be a lot of those people that just don't like him, and a lot of his supporters that are going to stick with him regardless.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and I wonder how long that's going to happen if he continues to flip-flop, or at least not keep the promises to this date that he promised out on the campaign trail, Mark, because tonight the president spoke to both the Canadian and Mexican leaders and agreed not to terminate NAFTA, which he spoke so much about on the campaign, and even last week out on the campaign trail, and even last week. The president just reversed not only a campaign promise, but a view he held as recently as last week?
I think his supporters are going to give him a lot of latitude. They have already. They did during the campaign. I think they look at him much more stylistically. I mean, those are the cues that they take from him. I heard a wild theory from a supporter and a colleague, somebody we both know, that was saying that there was actually sort of an intentional or strategic design to not getting a lot done, because his supporters thought that Obama did too much, so they don't want Trump to do too much.
That is boy, they are finding a silver lining.
I like that one. Very creative.
They have X-ray vision glasses for that.
Go ahead, John. What do you think about this NAFTA? It's saying maybe they're going to renegotiate at another point, but I mean, the rhetoric has been, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare in the first day. In the first 100 days, we're going to do NAFTA, at least do it very quickly, and then now this.
The one consistent thing, really, in Donald Trump's quasi-political career, going back to appearances in the late 1980s on Donahue, I think on the Today Show, has been about bad trade deals. And NAFTA, since its passage, negotiation under several presidents, but its ratification in 1993, has been a populist staple anti-NAFTA sentiment. This is what Ross Perot ran on. Remember, this is when got 19% back when back when 19% meant something, and this is what Pat Buchanan ran on in 1992 and 96. I'm interested in what Mark said. My sense is all of us have a strike count in life. Maybe it's 3 strikes, maybe it's 6 if you're lucky, and I do wonder what Trump's strike count is with his supporters. Yeah. If it's no wall, if it's NAFTA stands, if it's no infrastructure, at what point do they begin to think, you know what, I'm glad Hillary Clinton's not president, but I don't really want this guy?
Yeah, and again, he said he may renegotiate it in the future, not that he's dropped it altogether, but again, the whole point was to do it.
But as Yeah, but Don, as you know, whenever Trump says, I'll have something in 2 weeks, that's his tell that he's bluffing. That's like the birth certificate. I've got something coming on that soon. When he punts, that ball goes a long way.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you about, again, the poll in particular. Has President Trump done a good job choosing top advisors? Okay. 56% of people say no. What do you think is behind that? Mark McKinnon and then John.
Well, again, I think that's more a reflection of just kind of how people feel about him generally. I will say that people that I've talked to a lot for this episode that we're doing this week, where we're focusing not so much on what he's accomplished, but more on what he's learned. And I think he's learning the importance of senior staff and cabinet members and Democrats and Republicans. I'm saying it's not a partisan judgment, but think that he's put together a very solid national security team.
Do you think that he, all along when he was on the campaign trail saying this is going to be so easy, we're going to do it, do you think he's really learned? Do you think he knew all along it was going to be hard, or do you think he's actually learned?
Well, from everybody I talked to this week, and including people that are in the White House, they admit, they say, listen, this was a lot different than we thought it was going to be, a lot tougher than he thought it was going to be. And it's tough for anybody. It was tough for George W. Bush. It was tough for Bill Clinton. It's tough for people who've had government experience. If you've had none, it's kind of it's an acid bath shock. I mean, it's awakening for whoever's president, and
John,
and particularly coming from the business.
That's a big admission, because when he was warned, even from his competition, and when the media talked about it, it was fake news or it wasn't real. But it is real. This is on-the-job training, and he has a learning curve, probably a bigger learning curve than any other president before him.
Yeah, this is maybe the most important, or one of the one or two most important temperamental questions. Great presidents, great leaders of any kind, great people, learn from their mistakes. They have the humility, not in a Franciscan sense, but the humility to say, I was wrong about this. How do I do it better? In 1961, Jack Kennedy becomes president. He launches the Bay of Pigs operation. It's a disaster. He says, if this were a parliamentary system, I would resign. He calls Dwight Eisenhower. He seeks counsel. Eisenhower says, you've got to have people in the room. You've got to debate this more fully. Cut to October 1962, when when missiles are going into Cuba. Kennedy convenes the longest committee meeting in American history in order to apply that lesson that Eisenhower taught him. He was able to do that. We know that Trump is adaptable, but is he humble enough to truly acknowledge a mistake and learn from it? I just don't know.
Mark, I want you to watch. This is a clip from Sunday night's episode of The Circus. John Heilemann is asking Killer Mike. I saw Killer Mike, by the way.